What's up guys, this is Ray and welcome to Asia Filmist, and today we'll be talking about the 1965 classic kaiju film Gamera, the Giant Monster. Gamera, the Giant Monster was directed by Yuasa Noriyaki, who is the director of many, if not all, of the classic Showa period Gamera films. And just for clarification, we'll be talking about the original Japanese release of this. That's why it's called the Giant Monster. We won't be talking about the edited English language version, which was called Gamera the Invincible. And the story, I think, is very simple. It's a very classic kaiju story, in my opinion. It centers around this giant monster who awakens in the Arctic after an unknown aircraft gets shot down by an American fighter jet and crashes into the ice. And underneath the ice lies this sleeping giant fire-breathing turtle who is later named Gamera. And it's named Gamera after the three main characters. We have Dr. Hidaka, Kyoko, and Aoyagi. They speak to an Eskimo chief. And it's through the Eskimo chief they find out about the existence of Gamera and how it lived around the time when Atlantis was still over the water. Furthermore, they receive this kind of what they call a devil stone from this Eskimo chief, and that further solidifies the identity of Gamera. So let's talk about the positives of Gamera, but before we dive into that, I just want to say that Gamera was definitely a classic movie monster I enjoyed growing up. I was more of a Godzilla fan, but Gamera was fun too, and you can feel the different directions that the movies went. I think they were all enjoyable in their own ways. But when it comes to what I like about the original Gamera movie, first of all, it introduces the design, introduces Gamera to all of us. I think Gamera's design is unique compared to Godzilla. It's unique enough that it sets itself apart from that monster. First of all, it's a giant turtle. I'm a huge fan of turtles. Growing up, I always wanted a pet turtle, and I think I blame Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for that. But to see this giant turtle come to life and just wreck on things, I loved it as a kid. On top of that, he has huge fangs. He breathes and eats fire. Just try not to question that. And above all else, he can use these kind of jets, which are hidden in his in the arm and leg holes in his shell, to fly through the air like a flying saucer. And because of that, I think he definitely deserves a spot in kaiju history. And of course, the special effects which brought Gamera to life were well done. And, I think it follows many old tokusatsu techniques which were being established at the time. You could tell that everything was at a pretty much lower budget than Godzilla, although it was still definitely a lot of fun to watch. And this was the only Gamera film to be shot in black and white. I like that decision. Black and white movies, I think they have a charm on their own, and this being shot in black and white, it definitely gave the movie an overall more dramatic and more visceral feeling. Granted, this movie is definitely not a serious movie. I think it's made to be a kids movie, and eventually the Gamera series is known to be that as compared to the Godzilla movies. The Godzilla movies, they are for kids. Well, most of them aren't, but a lot of them are still. But I think all the Gamera films are aimed towards children. But yeah, I definitely like the feeling of watching it in black and white. I think if this was shot in color, it definitely would have given me a different experience. And lastly, I did enjoy the performances of the main cast. Granted, I'm talking about the three lead characters, Dr. Hidaka, Aoyagi, and Kyoko. But this kind of leads into my first negative I have to say about this movie, and I wish that the characters were just a bit more fleshed out. You get kind of bits and pieces. You don't really know their backstory, what they're all about. You know what kind of character archetypes they are. Dr. Hidaka, he's a scientist which so happens to be an expert on Gamera, or at least animals. He's a zoologist, if I'm not mistaken. And Kyoko is his assistant. She doesn't really do much other than just travel with him. And then Aoyagi, he's the charismatic photographer. But other than Dr. Hidaka, I don't think they do much as far as contributing to overall story. I think Kyoko contributed the least to the story. They had their own respective things that they were doing, but I think it would have been nice to see a lot more fleshed out character. And another thing is that in the original Gamera the Giant Monster, it features numerous scenes featuring actors who portray American soldiers. And let me just tell you, these scenes are just awkward and horrible. You don't get any kind of emotional response. They're supposed to be in the middle of these urgent situations, but it looks like they're just reading straight from a paper. Hell, a lot of the props that they handle are papers, with messages that they have to deliver to other members of the military. And I kid you not, it feels like their script was written on these papers. And that's, you know, that's the kind of level of performance we get. Some of the negatives, like, and I felt the story is very formulaic, and when I say formulaic, I mean it's pretty much the same kind of order of events as Godzilla. You get, you know, and other giant monster movies around this time. You get the giant monster who is sleeping in slumber and then gets awakened by mankind, and then this monster takes its vengeance upon mankind. But what kind of makes this Gamera movie story a bit kind of more in the negative side is that the story was very incoherent. And you know, you get two main stories going on at the same time for the majority of the film. You get the story where you follow Dr. Hidaka and his two assistants, or his two partners, if you will. And as they go and talk to all these international leaders, these groups of the military, and figuring out on how to stop Gamera in its path. And then the second story that it follows is this one of this boy named Toshio. And, you know, Toshio, he has a pet turtle, but his family forces him to set his turtle free. So, but the moment he sets his turtle free, he discovers Gamera. And so, you know, obviously his love of turtles kind of distorts his view of Gamera. So he tries his hardest to tell the world that Gamera is basically misunderstood, that he actually means no harm. But, you know, lol, because here's Gamera. They show numerous scenes of him just smashing buildings intentionally, and then also breathing fire and just roasting humans. I mean, it's pretty blatant if you ask me. I mean, I think Toshio judges everything about Gamera based on his experience of getting saved by Gamera. Gamera destroys the lighthouse where Toshio lives, and Toshio happens to be there. And before Toshio can fall to his death, Gamera uses his hand and saves Toshio. This scene does not make sense if you compare it to the rest of the story, to be honest. And speaking of Toshio, he is the single most annoying character in the story. I mean, first of all, I guess maybe it's a reflection of kids. I mean, kids can be pretty annoying, but but in the context of the story, he just basically puts his body in a harm's way without considering any consequences. And the reason why is because he just wants to go to where Gamera is. I mean, there's this one scene where they're hauling all these tankers, which are on train tracks, basically because Gamera gets attracted to flames. And by crashing these trains to where Gamera is, it creates fires. And this kind of keeps Gamera contained in this one space for a small amount of time. And what does Toshio does? You know, he obviously sees a bunch of trains get swiped by Gamera, getting smashed and being burst into flames. But what does he do? He rides onto one of these trains and just hauls towards Gamera. I mean, how stupid can you be? I mean, I understand he's a kid, and he's supposed to be kind of the viewpoint that kids can kind of relate to, so that way they can become the main audience for this movie. But to have him doing stupid shit like this, it's just, man, why didn't Gamera just kill him already? That being said, overall, what did I think of Gamera? You know, despite the negatives of what I just said, I still think it's a classic kaiju movie. I think generally kaiju movies have stories that basically don't make sense in the realms of science and, you know, overall just logic, but that's the fun part of kaiju movies. And I think Gamera has its own charm. It's definitely a lighter tone than Godzilla, as many people as he murders, but definitely Gamera is on the unique side. Like I said earlier, he's unique enough to set himself apart from Godzilla, and it kind of sets the tone to how wacky his movies will be in the future. And, you know, I can't help but have a soft spot for Gamera, as kind of weird and strange as his stories are. So I definitely recommend watching it, especially if you're a fan of kaiju movies or you just want something fun to check out. But yes, those are my thoughts on Gamera. What did you guys think, or what kind of questions did you guys have? Let me know in the comment section below. Please like, share, and subscribe. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. And by all means, please support Asian Films on Patreon. It definitely helps the channel a lot. And hey, did you know I started a Discord server so we can all come together and talk about Asian films? You'll find the link to the Discord server in the description area below. And yeah, that's about it for me, guys. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching. Hope to see you all again in the next video. Take it easy.